Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Angie Weinberger, who discusses with us her early life of what she now knows as post-trauma. And it was post-traumatic syndrome she had that she carried with her for a while and didn't really recognize what it was that was keeping her from performing at her designed potential. She discovered that a little later in life, and she learned what she needed to do to overcome that. Her lesson in life is very applicable to leaders in the workplace, that it is possible that you have someone in the workplace who is underperforming because of something in life such as post-traumatic syndrome. As we are aware of these people who might have something inhibiting them from performing at their full potential, when we have a culture of a psychologically safe workspace, my hope is that those people would be willing to discuss with us what is troubling them. They might need professional help beyond us to overcome whatever is troubling them, but through our awareness, we can help them. Through our compassionate caring, they will know that we care about them. Let's listen to Angie to determine what it was that she went through, and these are symptomatic of what could be happening to someone in your organization. Let's listen and learn together. Angie, it's great to have you with us. Our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing a bit of your past, as I have learned to know you through maybe almost a year association. You have felt comfortable stating that there was a time in your life where you were not performing at your God-given potential. And I'm just curious if that might be a matter of someone said something to or about you, what it might be. And Angie, the whole purpose of my starting this conversation this way is to appeal to leaders that we might have people in our family, in our organization, that are not performing at their God-given potential because of something said to or about them in the past. And that stays with us. And for some of us, and it's a part of my background, for some of us, those negative words stay with us and they are draining to us intellectually and or emotionally. Angie, I don't want to suppose any of that is a part of your story, but our listeners are going to be very interested in how you have overcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Ron, for the invitation. It's great talking to you today. Yeah, so let me maybe start with my actual past. I lost my dad really early in life when I was about 16 through a car accident. And, my parents were always very supportive of anything I wanted to do. So, had this not happened, I probably would be an actress by now, or, a writer or journalist. But I felt a strong need to get into a profession where I could actually, make some money, like something serious. So, somebody pointed me in the direction of business, and then I wanted to work with people. So, I started my career in HR thinking I would work with people. And I think I was about, let's say, 10 years into my HR career, fairly successful. I was already a vice president. So, like I had pretty, made pretty good progress already. But there were several times in my career where more senior leaders, gave me some, let's say, actual great advice. And one thing that just came to my mind was that one leader once said to me, "Look, you should not work in HR. You should do something more like in consulting or coaching and work with people. You have such great potential, but you're actually wasted in HR." So that was what one leader said to me over a glass of beer while we were firing a lot of people from their job. And then another leader told me once, while I was working on a project in India, she said, "Look, you're working so hard, Angie, but does anybody like in leadership know what you're actually doing?" And this was more about, self-promotion. So maybe you know this, Ron, but I had this belief that if I just worked well, worked hard enough, did a good job, then I would sort of be discovered. I sometimes now refer to this as sort of the Cinderella complex. Somebody's gonna discover me and save me. And this doesn't happen in the real world. So, you have to do good work, but you also need to talk about it. And I think a lot of women, especially, feel a lot of shame around self-promotion and even, just about telling people the good things that they do.
Now, you lost your dad at when you're 16 years old. That was, I'm guessing, Angie, emotional trauma to you. Did you have to go through some number of years of overcoming that emotional trauma? Did that impact you feeling a little bit less of yourself?
Ron, I think only in hindsight I recognize the impact it's had on my life. Maybe even only in the last 5 to 10 years, while becoming a better coach, a deeper coach, working more on psychology topics, I probably recognized that, a lot of the things that I did in my previous life were post-traumatic stress disorder topics. So, you worked in the army, you've dealt with this probably a lot yourself, you know what I'm talking about. But when I was at that time, there was not a lot of therapy, or people didn't really think about, that I could probably need some sort of emotional support going through such a loss at the time. So I usually just survived. Like I was in survival mode for a long time and basically worked hard.
Angie, I'm going to ask you somewhat of a leading question here, and I have a reason for asking this, but have you felt that you've always had to work especially hard to prove yourself to be a member of a team, maybe because of your gender being a female? And I want to ask you some other questions about being a
Yeah.
part of a team.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting experience for me because I would say up until I graduated from university back like mid 90s, I didn't notice, that I was a woman. Like, for me, it didn't make so much difference that I'm a woman. But when I got out of university and into the corporate world, and, I was in banking, so it was a bit of a male-dominated field, then, there were some comments that I could not really place. And there were also, at that time in Germany, there were still things, that were common that in the US you would not have heard of, even like in the 90s. Like a comment about, I should wear more dresses or similar things, where I was just thinking, really? That's how you, determine my competence based on the fact whether, I wear a dress or a pant? But I think there's the subtle issue that women experience that has not really, been named for a long time. And that is, that you always have to prove yourself more. Or especially, and that is a situation I really know well, when you were like the only woman in the room, that sometimes, you felt a bit like invisible. And then, you would say something. This is a common example I also experience, but I hear from a lot of women, like the woman says something and then a man says the same thing, and then the man gets praised and the woman, is ignored. Or that the man progress faster in the promotion cycle than the women. So also, that is something I would say I think I experienced life. But as I told you, I had a pretty good career. I'm pretty satisfied with the possibilities that I received and what I was able to achieve. I think I was also quite open to experiment. Like, I was asked if I wanted to go to India within the next 2 weeks, and I said, sure, why not? Yeah, so, that wasn't also not very common back in the day that women would just do that. So, I think I wasn't lucky that I went to those steps, but I also, I also had very good mentors along the way, managers along the way that were very supportive, or, really helped me see things that I didn't see myself.
You mentioned the German culture, and what I want to ask you is not to be discriminatory at all or negative about the German culture, but you are an international traveler and speaker. Are women, do you have to adapt to the culture of the various countries to be accepted, do you think, as a woman?
I think honestly, it depends a bit on what we're talking about. I feel like it is a lot more acceptable now to be like a female speaker, an author, to be on panels than maybe it was 20 years ago. So, when I think back about my first project in India, it was very often common to be separated. So the men and the women, they were in separate rooms, or they had separate, like, let's say, circles. Like, when you were trying to network in a Germanic context, it's all mixed. But there it was separated. And that was an interesting experience for me as, somebody who was always used to being treated on an eye-to-eye level with men, to just be in a different room or in a different circle just because of my gender. But this has also changed a lot. Yeah. So generally, I would say, yes, you need to adapt to your audience, but now, what we experience many times is that our audience are very well, they're very heterogenic, they're very mixed. We work with people from all over the globe. Even, in classrooms, we have people from everywhere. So that's one of the things that I address in one of my programs, the Global Rock Stars, is, to understand that you need to be inclusive to everybody. Cultural background, gender background, any kind of identity you have to sort of take into account as a leader of a global team or remote team. And so, it's no longer only about gender. There's so many things to need to think about as a leader.
And I want to address, again, the topic of teamwork. And uh, inclusivity. That yes, it's thank you to you and others who have helped with total inclusivity. But do you see, have you worked with different companies that are not functioning as well as could be as a team because you can sense maybe some discrimination, some gender biases, whatever the term may be? Angie, I'm addressing teamwork now because as we are recording this on what is today, the April 6th, 7th, that very recently in the United States we had we had a U.S. crew member rescued from the Iranian war who was down, and as we're recording this, he was shot down on Good Friday and recovered on Easter Sunday. But it was through teamwork that everything came about. And I'm going to say as well as I'm building up to teamwork, right now, Artemis 2 is circling the moon en route back to the Earth. The huge amount of teamwork, male, female, total inclusivity that brought all of that about. What I'm trying to do, Angie, is emphasize the importance of total integrated teamwork. In your current work with leadership and culture, can you sometimes identify that no, you're not functioning well as a team because you have inherent biases type thing?
Absolutely. And Ron, I'm also not free of these biases. So even, myself, I'm still learning every day. So I'm trying to also in my team bring in people that are very different from me, so that I can also, continue to challenge my own bias. And when we put together the book, which is now already 3 years old, the Rockstar album, we were also working in an interdisciplinary team with freelancers, and we had some challenges as well during the book production that we needed to address then, and we brought our learning back into the book. And I think, what happens a lot is that leaders, no matter what gender, they have their own way, they're a bit set in their ways, they think they know how to run something, how things are actually working. However, at a certain age, we also stop learning. And then it might be useful to bring in the different perspective, even from a very young person, because, they might have ideas about things like, for example, AI that you don't understand, because you just haven't dealt with these things. Or even maybe not only technology, maybe it's other things, like maybe you've never dealt with a situation in your life where you didn't have electricity or Wi-Fi. But, in their country, this is very normal. So they might be a bit more resilient than you. And these are the kinds of things I find really useful to practice as a global leader, or rock star, as I tend to call them, to really understand a bit more the perspective where the other person is coming from. And sometimes even to challenge your own assumptions by asking a question like, what are you trying to tell me? Or how could you explain this to me again? Because I'm not sure if I'm getting you. Yeah. So even that sometimes helps. And one of the things, that is the key to inclusive working, to teamwork, especially in remote team, is to ensure that every team member has a voice. And for some people, it might not be the spoken word. Yeah. So what you probably also know is, when we have a team and there's a bunch of native speakers in English, and then we have a bunch of non-native speakers, and maybe some more like people from a cultural background where group harmony is more important than individual success. You have to be really careful that you still bring everybody on board somehow. And for some people, it might be better, to write than to talk. So these are the kind of topics that we work on with our global leaders in our programs.
I love the term rockstar team. And now you mentioned just a moment ago bring on people that are different from you. And wow, Angie, I'm a wholehearted believer in that. I'll just say, as a brief example, Marty, my wife of 57 years, and I are very different, but in complementary ways. And is it fair to say, Angie, that you need to know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and surround yourself with people who can strengthen your weaknesses, gender irrelevant? That's and I mean that as a question, not a statement. I want to take a very brief moment to tell you about myself, the Cooper Culture, a certified veteran-owned small business. I am a retired lieutenant colonel serving the Air Force for 22 years as an F-4 pilot, commander. I have 300 combat missions. I specialize in executive leadership training, team building, and workplace culture, where we help businesses to develop a culture of loyalty, trust, and by developing personality traits and personal strengths, we can help identify those traits that support the company's objectives. We do this through half-day and all-day training shops. I'm also a public speaker where I welcome the opportunity to speak with your group to help you develop your team to the point where people are loyal and they know exactly how they fit in the organization and contribute to your strategic objectives. Through that, you will have a very profitable company and a psychologically safe space where people know they can freely discuss everything about the company themselves, and we are always working together to progress. Contact me at ron@thecooperculture.com. Our website is thecooperculture.com. Look forward to the opportunity to speak with your group, work with your group, to take your group to the next level to where we soar together. Let's work together.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's obviously, you know, a lot of a lot of leadership development programs are self-recognition programs. Like, how do you actually understand yourself better? Because you can only lead others when you understand yourself and when you can lead yourself. Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir here. So, but I think, you know, this is one of the things that people often underestimate, especially if they start to go on this journey. It's like say, you know, mid-career, midlife. They come to us, for example, you know, because they want tools. So a lot of times when I ask my coaching clients, my executive coaching clients, so what do you want to get out of today's session? They're like, oh, I hoped you were gonna give me some tools. Like, okay, here's the toolbox. Yeah. It's like, you know, a DIY session or something. They always want tools, methods, models. But hardly anyone understands, you know, that the first thing that they have to learn is, you know, who am I? Why am I ticking the way I'm ticking? Why am I behaving the way I'm behaving? You know, as I mentioned to you right in the beginning of the interview, like the fact, you know, that I probably have post-traumatic stress disorder and that this leads, you know, to me being in survival mode for most of my career, that was something I only learned recently. So, but this is something, you know, I think that a lot of my clients face. I have a lot of clients with post-traumatic stress disorder, and they don't know that they have that. They just, you know, they think some of the issues that they face, they are because of other things, you know, like in the environment. So we need to, you know, like we need to learn more about ourselves. And then it's very similar in therapy, for example, you know, once you start to understand yourself better, then you can also tackle your situations, your topics, your problems better.
As leaders, it might be difficult to become aware of post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Angie, I want to ask you very candidly, would you feel comfortable discussing a little bit about your personal PTSD? And I'm asking this question totally in the context that how could a leader maybe recognize the symptoms of someone else experiencing PTSD? As I'm asking this question, I want to be very careful that we as leaders are not trying to label or stigmatize anybody, but rather because of your past PTSD, you might not be performing at your maximum potential. But Angie, can you give our listeners some maybe clues how to be aware of, and then how do you approach a person who might be experiencing PTSD? They may not be willing to divulge or discuss any part of that, but maybe they would if you had the right approach. That's kind of a wide overarching
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah. So first of all, caveat: I'm not a clinical psychologist. Obviously, I'm a coach and an HR professional by background. So I would say if you have the suspicion, even the slight suspicion as a manager or HR person, that one of your team members suffers from symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, I think you need to refer them to a professional. So, don't try to deal with the topics yourself. But I think one of the symptoms could be in like a low resilience to stress. Yeah. So when you notice, for example, that they're constantly overwhelmed, but in your like perception, it's not clear why. That could be a sign. Yeah. Or that they're postponing important decisions to the future because they always think, oh, at some stage I will feel safe. And when I feel safe, I will do X, Y, Z. That could be an indication. Maybe some people, one of the indicators somebody told me quite early in my career is, and I think that's an indicator, is that they don't let people in. Like, at some stage they just block. I think that they have at some stage lost trust, in others, or they don't want to shock people with the reality. Let's say, for example, as a soldier, you've seen things in the war, and you don't want to share that with others. Then you build this wall, yeah. And somehow people feel like they cannot get through a wall with you. They only get to a certain point with you. So these could be, I think, some of the indicators that I would.
What I'm
describe.
processing you're saying, Angie, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but a person who has near-term thinking, and that's how I'm processing what you're saying, that, oh, I feel overwhelmed. I don't know how to get from where I am to the next point. I look at that as near-term thinking. For a person who's near-term, they may not be, they may be conditioned, their mindset, that I just don't know how to get beyond where I am in my thinking. And that may be an indication that, there's something that is keeping, there's a barrier between where you are and where you can be. And that may be where professionals can help open the door, so to speak. And Angie, I too am not a certified professional in this, but I'm curious if what I'm saying may be an indicator for our leaders who are listening.
Yeah. And then there's another thing that I usually tell my clients, no matter what kind of symptom or issue that they have, generally to deal with stress. That is to learn to listen to body symptoms. Because most of us, when we experience some kind of stress, there's what is usually called a trigger. And the trigger is something that already happens, you already notice it in your body before your brain even understands what is going on. So for example, you could have back pain or headaches, migraines, or, for some people, the skin starts to get scarred, or people usually, when I say that, they say, oh yeah, now I know, whenever I get stressed, I get, like my heart rate goes up. So they start to then listen to these body symptoms a bit more, and then they can understand a bit more what creates stress for them. And that is very different from person to person. And I think that also has a lot to do with, for example, what you have experienced in childhood.
I'm totally on board with you. What you seem to be saying is you seem to be addressing emotional intelligence. Is that essentially what it is?
it's basically goes back to, getting to understand yourself better.
Yes.
And most of the time, most like people that I deal with, and I think you probably have deal with similar people, they're very like brain minded. So, they try to explain and analyze and overanalyze everything.
Yeah.
Usually I deal with very intelligent people to, like actual really highly intelligent people. But they don't really have access to their emotional side. So as you could say you need to develop emotional intelligence, but this is also very hard to grasp for people. But when they then, understand, oh, maybe my body can tell me something that I didn't even realize, that I had, it helps sometimes for them to make a little progress, especially when it comes to resilience.
Yes, and what I'm thinking of as you're speaking, it is possible that something through conversation could trigger an emotion which causes you to reflect on something in the past, which then makes the past a current happening in the mind, which tends to control you for the moment.
Exactly. And most people will, know that in hindsight. They will say, oh yeah, this happened. And because of this, I then reacted in this way. But usually only when they start to reflect, and this reflection only happens in coaching or in therapy sessions. Because in the normal day-to-day, they don't get the time to reflect. So, one of the things I always say is, if you want to really start an executive coaching process, you do this because that gives you the space and time to think and to reflect on your experience, get to know yourself better, and then lead from a more informed approach rather than from, the rat race that you're normally in.
Now, in your practice of becoming a rock star, are you an emotional coach, or do you hand that over to a professional?
So that's a very good question. So I think, as a coach, I try to bring in also the emotional side. But we're very much focused on the future, not so much focused on the past. So it starts like at today, and from today we go into the future and into action. And then sometimes if somebody wants to go deeper, I can suggest, what kind of topics that maybe they want to discuss or look at. But it's not therapy, obviously.
Angie, as we bring this in for a landing, I want to ask you a question. I think there are a lot of people who are you and I might be able to detect may be inhibited through PTSD, something that has emotionally triggered them in the past. Would you feel comfortable having another episode where we discuss, I'm going to use the term emotional intelligence, but it's coaching a person to help overcome whatever's holding them back. And it may be the PTSD, but it's helping the person think long term. I call it critical thinking, but there are any number of things that can help a person to become a longer term thinker. Would you feel comfortable addressing that part as your therapy business?
Ron, I'd be happy to talk more about this because I honestly think a lot of people right now struggle. And here, for example, in Switzerland and in Germany, it's very hard to get a therapist. So I'm thinking, for some people, they might not need therapy. Maybe just a few, sessions with me would already help them to move forward. So yes, happy to talk more about this. Feel free to invite me again.
Angie, I will. And I don't want our listeners to think that I am oversimplifying this, but I know through my own life experience and practice, sometimes when we project and it's genuine from our heart, we care. People respond to that. And Angie, I'm sensing you exude that in your with the people you work with. You genuinely care, and when people know that, they will be willing to work with you. Angie, we look forward to having you come back for another episode. Great to have you with us.
Been a total pleasure. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.